No Ideas Original Podcast, episode 148. We got a good one for y'all. We're going to have Delroy Edwards joining us from the Fathers in Color podcast. Okay, I see. There he goes right there. Hey, how you doing?
What's going on?
What's up? How are you?
Chilling. I'm chilling. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I mean, we got some real bad weather. I'm sure you guys are getting some bad weather by you as well.
Yeah. There was a hurricane down south, but it's just been raining. I wouldn't even say it's all that bad weather, but it's just been raining.
Let's get Rob in. Okay. There you go.
Yo, what's up, fellas?
What's
How
going
you
on,
doing,
Rob?
man?
I'm here, bro. Amidst all of this typhoon outside.
Yeah, that's what I was just sharing with him. It's like, man, it's
Oh,
like
it's
we
like that for y'all. It wasn't even that bad for us.
no, we getting hit hard, real
I'm
hard.
I'm up in the mountains, so I had to go walk my dog, so I got drenched out there, man.
Hey,
Oh man.
How
Well,
you doing, man?
we want to welcome everybody to this episode of the No Ideas Original Podcast. This particular episode, this is going to be a really special one. We're joined by Delroy Edwards, the founder, creator of the Fathers in Color podcast. Very interesting topic tonight. I have to tell you, I watched your last episode too. It was really good.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. Talk to us a little bit about, what made you decide to start this podcast and why now?
One of the main reasons why I wanted to start my podcast was because I wanted to gain some fellowhood or some fellowship in fatherhood. Recently, I became a father of two, so it was very important to me to reach out to other fathers and get their experience in fatherhood, as well as just to show up, just to have someone I could talk to about the things that I was going through as a father and hear their perspective as well. So yeah, now that was one of the main reasons why I created the podcast.
How is fatherhood? How's fatherhood going so far?
Now father is going, I'm loving it so far, but we in the beginning, so
Right. That's right.
who knows where we have to go from here. And that's why I wanted to speak to more fathers to gain just a little bit more knowledge from all of my resources. We do a lot of resource well nowadays, when you want to find out something, you jump on Google, you type it in, you find it out from who knows. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to get more personal when it came to the information that I received. So I wanted to talk to some fathers about that.
Yeah,
It's going good. It's going good.
I have to say my experience in being a father is like it's probably the most rewarding thing that I've ever experienced. It's also the most challenging. It's difficult, but it's the most rewarding thing also, like just the joy from your children, seeing them grow, no matter how big they grow, always in your eyes, you're always going to look and see them as little ones, but it really helps you put in perspective just in terms of like the relationship you have with your parents. And I know one of the things about your podcast that's really appealing is you're talking about like this generational shift, right? Like how our fathers fathered versus how we father and versus how our children may potentially father. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, of course. So again, so one of the reasons why I created the podcast was because personally I lacked I would say positive men in my life, and I wanted to gain that experience or garner that relationship with people I knew. So creating my podcast was a way for me to look at the relationship I had with the men in my life and then change how I reflect my relationship with my son. I have a son who's about 18 months now. And I wanted to make sure that I developed a great relationship with my son from birth all the way until who knows. But definitely that was one of the reasons why I created the podcast, because I wanted to make sure that I made that relationship very strong. So yeah.
It's interesting that that society seems to be really open to this whole thing around like support when it comes to mothering, right? So there's like all these support groups for what it means to become a new mother, but you know the discussion about a support group for what it means to become a new father and the
Right.
changes and different experiences that we all go through as a result of becoming a new father. For some reason, it doesn't seem as prevalent. I don't know if it's that, you know, like it's viewed as men are masculine and they're not open to having those kind of seem to exist. That network is not out there like it's out there for women.
I completely hear you on that. Another reason why I created my podcast was because during the birth of our two children, I realized that, you know, all the doulas and the midwives, they asked my wife a lot of questions, you know, like, how are you feeling today? They came back, they visited, like, you know, like maybe for a week straight, they were coming like every day asking my wife how she was, how she was doing, and so forth. And no one asked me any questions as far as how I was doing, as far as how I was, you know, dealing with the changes that are in the house. And it doesn't just affect your wife when you have a child. You know what I'm saying? There's tons of stuff that's happening in the home. So that's one of the reasons why I created a podcast, because I wanted to ask other dads like, yo, how are you doing? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like how it has, you know, having a child changed you or changed the relationship in your home. You know what I'm saying? So I hear you. There's a lot of groups out there tailored to women and to mothers. But there's, to me, from my research, there's not a lot of groups tailored to the father.
Yeah.
Good that you're starting a podcast that's doing that. So maybe, man, you could touch some channels and hopefully we can get some more resources for men having thought in that process of having a child with their wife or their girl or whoever. Me respectively, I'm a little different because I don't have any children of my own, but
Okay.
I've fathered so many children in my years. You know what I mean? From as young as 3 months old up into being teenagers. And although I don't have any of my own, the responsibility is still the same. You know what I mean? I have to be careful.
Understood.
A set structure, you know, teaching them about being respectful and saying yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. Always asking, being polite. Those things are just basic things concurrent with growing up. So those things are important, and we need the support of more males talking to each other like we are doing now.
Correct.
People feel
Indeed.
very comfortable with being a pops, with being the soccer dad, or whatever the case.
Yeah.
Changing some diapers. I mean, when I had to change my first diaper, it was like, oh crap. But
And I
you know,
feel you. I feel you.
but it's the journey, and you have to respect the journey because, you know, not for nothing, we think women do this by themselves. It's hard for them too. They go through a number of changes, especially post birth. You know, after birth, and you know how they body changing, how they feeling, and we supposed to be. It is imperative that we step in and be that buffer to help do that. But then we need a little buffer
We
too.
need exactly. Yeah.
It goes definitely hand in hand.
Man, do you have people been receptive, like in your outreach, to actually engage people for interviews or conversations? Have people been
Um,
receptive to it?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Some people have been very receptive as far as doing the interviews, as far as sitting down and actually talking about their relationships with their children and their wives. You know what I'm saying? But some men are still withdrawn. You know what I'm saying? They don't really want to share their information, or they don't really want to be in a spotlight like that. And obviously, you know, to no fault of their own, so I believe, you know, society has made it so that men have to be like this brick wall,
Yeah.
and if we show emotion, it's kind of frowned upon. So I think that's what's happening with a lot of the men that I speak to who don't really want to do the podcast, or more like give me some time. Like they have that societal image of, I have to remain strong so that no one really sees it. No one really can break down my walls. So yeah, but there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, nah, listen, this is good. This is good stuff that you're putting out. When you get to an episode that, you know, describes how I'm doing in my fatherhood, let me know and I'll hop right on. So yeah.
That's dope. That's dope. You know, I think one of the things about this discussion that's interesting to me, and I was sharing with you yesterday, is that a few weeks ago we had this whole big back and forth. We were talking about 50 Cent and his son, his oldest son, and his oldest son's his oldest son's mother. And there was like a huge discussion as it relates to like the child support. And one of the things that was interesting to me about that discussion that we were having was it appeared that paying child support and being financially supportive was sort of accepted as just being what the norm and the role was for a father. And I think we've contributed to perpetuating that belief also. And the reason why I say that is because, well, for one, aside from just the whole element of, you know, well, you got to pay child support. Some dudes think that because they pay child support, that makes them a great father because they financially took care of their kids. But also you think about like when you turn on TV and you watch movies, how fathers are depicted. Fathers are depicted as the ones that go out, go to work, you know, they bring the money home, they pay the bills, they take care of the responsibilities around the house, like maintenance related responsibilities.
Right.
But a significant portion of the child rearing is left to the mom. And I just, and when I look at that, I'm like, well, part of it is society that's created that. The other part of it, again, is like how we've sort of fell into that role of this is what it is. And this is what defines a good father. And I think that makes it easy for, even to go back to 50 Cent, that makes it easy for people to say, well, 50 Cent paid his child support, so he did his role in terms of raising his kid. But I don't know why we've sort of become, you know, accepting of the fact that financial support makes you a great dad. Because I know dudes that's like really good fathers that don't have the finances to do these wonderful things for their children, but they're able to offer emotional support, mental support, spiritual support. There you go. All these other intangibles that for some reason have gotten lost with this element of finances. Like you think about it, like when fathers are taking the court, they're taking the court for financial support, you know, but you have the opportunity to say whether it is or not that you actually want joint custody. You know, as a dad, that's crazy to me. You could be like, nah, I don't want custody. I just want to pay my child support. And the state of the government, whoever it is, they're comfortable with just the fact that you financially assume the responsibility. You know, when I was running a program, we would run family therapy groups. And in the family therapy groups, we would ask moms and dads to come. Most of the time, the moms came. And one of the things that I would ask the therapist, I'm like, well, why are the fathers not here? And a lot of it went just back to role. Like, you know, in the family, the role is the dad go out. He's the breadwinner. The mom is responsible solely for the child rearing. And that to me is just like, I don't know how we sort of dispel or how we shift that dynamic from it only being about, you know, financially, you have to be supportive. You know, there's other elements that go to making sure your kids are well-rounded and raised properly. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, my thoughts are expansive on that. I do believe that society sets us up for failure in that way, because they are the ones that paint that picture. They're the ones that make the movies. You know what I'm saying? They're the ones that allow, you know, someone to go to court and say, hey, you know, I'll pay my child support, whatever the money it is. Boom, that's it. I'm done. Not for nothing. If you wanted to, you could say like, hey, instead of the, you know, $6,000-$7,000 that you're paying per month, we're gonna do it where you have to do 100 hours of community service with your child. Boom, now you locked in. You know what I'm saying? And your probation officer or whoever it is coming in and they're making sure that you're spending that time with the child. The child's writing up reports and so forth. So there are ways to garner that relationship outside of just being like, oh, you know, take this money. But our court systems and everything is set up so that, hey, give the money, go back to work. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, and it's crazy that it's like that, because if the roles were reversed, everyone would look at a mother like, whoa, that's what she's doing? Like, that's crazy.
Of course, get a piece of that funding that man did too. So he got paid for
Correct.
and all that. So that's why it's
Mhm.
for them to to put a dude on child support, because the cost is like, all right, yeah, all right, $250 a month, $300 a month, $3,000 a month. I'm getting PC of that. But
Exactly, you're right. So yeah, no, it's a win-win for them,
right,
because one, it keeps the man out of the child's life, which
right,
ends up steering children more than likely down the wrong path and back into that court system that feeds their pockets again. So you know what I'm saying? To me, it's a win-win for them to keep fathers away, especially in our community. You know what I
right.
mean? So,
Yeah,
mhm.
I guess the financial piece you could quantify, but the emotional support is not as easy to quantify. And I don't know if people. I think that we now know that there's value in emotional support and spending time with your kids, but
Mhm.
I don't think that for some reason that like people are willing to kind of lay that to the side as long as financially you're doing what you're supposed to do as a dad. And I even think about like TV shows growing up, the depiction of how we were depicted as fathers, right? So you think about like
Mhm.
even a show like Good Times, right? The mom, she was holding down the house, doing all the child rearing, raising the children, everything. James' sole purpose was to go out every day
And
and just
work.
look for work.
That's it. Yep.
And that
Mhm.
qualified him as being a great
A good
father,
father.
right?
Hmm.
So we I feel like we kind of put ourselves in this box and we've created this illusion, if you will, of this is what constitutes a great dad. So if you start thinking about that from generation to generation to generation, then you
Hmm.
you run into a cycle of fathers that potentially are absent from their children's life by financially they're present,
Hmm.
believing that that's what constitutes a great father. Why? Because that's how their father fathered. That's how
And
their
and
father
so
their
forth.
children,
Correct.
and then
Yeah.
their children are gonna say, "Well, this is how
Hmm.
my dad handled it," and it just keeps that cycle going on and on. And I wonder again, like, how do we break a cycle like that?
You
Man,
know,
that's a good question. Honestly, I don't know how we're going to break the cycle. I know how I'm going to try to break that cycle. And how I'm going to break that cycle is by having these conversations that we're having, and making sure that I'm in my child's life. I am a stay-at-home dad. I do work full time. My wife works full time as well,
Mm-hmm.
but I stay at home, working remote. You know what I'm saying? And I understand that not all fathers have that luxury, but I'm going to make it so that you know, my child 18 years from now doesn't hit me up and say, hey, let me give you this 5,000 to spend this day with me. You know what I mean? Because I can't have that. I can't have that.
uh,
well, we got to come out of the older Dodge when when black families were fighting for rights, leaving out of Jim Crow, going into civil rights, and then there was a split. Men coming home from Vietnam, not having jobs, and women were forced to be put on welfare. But in order to keep their welfare, they had to keep the man.
man out the house.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You had to hide the clothes, make sure his shoes wasn't at the front door, or they would revoke your welfare. And
Right.
that hurt our community, more importantly, because the man was the structure. He was the lawgiver. He was the security at home. And once that was there, mom kind of felt alone. Now he ain't here. What am I to do? She had that little despair, but then she had to fight through that through the 80s and 90s and become more independent and become more self-sufficient in what she did because he wasn't around. And that just gave some men kind of the back door, like, well, I ain't there, so I ain't gonna be there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't fight through the system to get back into their child's life. Um, and I think we're responsible now that we know better, to become better men and not repeat some of the things that have happened in the past.
Yeah.
I hear
My
you.
my position around that is like I think knowledge is important and theory is great, but practice is where sometimes we get stuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can know, but if it's just been routine in our culture and that this is just the way that it goes. And to be honest with you, some of this stuff is just the circumstances of what it is. Like, in order for us to live, we have to, dad got to go to work and hold it down. And this is mom's role or whatever it is. But I just feel like as a result of us kind of falling in line with these gender roles, that it's really done a disservice
Right.
to fathers. You know, it's really done a disservice to fathers, and it's really, to me, it's lowered the bar also on what it means to be a good father, right?
Right.
Because we created this distinction between dads. You know, like, you know, you could be a dad that buys your kid everything and be viewed as a great dad. Then you could be a dad who doesn't have anything to buy your kid anything, but you take them to school every day. You know, you take them to all their games or whatever it is, and be viewed as a
Homework.
bum.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, they'd be like, oh, he's a simp. They'd be like, oh, he's a simp because he takes care of his kids and, you know, loves his wife and so forth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We see that all the time. We see that all the time.
So yeah, I enjoy being a soccer dad. What?
I'm telling you.
Picking them up, cruising in the car. I got 13 kids in the back yelling, screaming. Yo, listen, man. I enjoyed it, bro. It was fun for me, man, because I didn't have that. You know what I mean? Well, my step pops did play that role. My biological didn't. But him playing that role of, you know, snatching up my friends and going to basketball practice, you know, they always knew that, you know, your friends, with your friends there, making them inclusive made you feel good about, you know, the pops being around, and then your pops became the cool dad. And everyone was hanging out with Rob Dad because Rob Dad takes them to go get the 50-cent frakes on Broadway. So you got, you set the tone for yourself. You know what I mean? Set the tone for the relationship that you want to have with your son. You know, you pay attention to how he's growing. You know, does he like gymnastics? Does he like sports? Does he like piano? You know what I mean? You keep encouraging him in that arena and that atmosphere, they like being it and be a part of it. That's, like I said, by me not being a biological dad, I've always paid attention to what a child likes.
Right.
And with that, I start to draw like, oh, you want to create sneakers? All right, let's go get a pen and paper. Let's draw some sneakers. But you have to be inclusive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Child support ain't gonna do that, bro.
No, it's not. That's what I said. That's because dads are evaluated based on their financial involvement. Dr. Wade actually has a really good question here. She said, is there a fear component around Black men embracing fatherhood for the ones who aren't present?
Ooh, stop. Where you at, stop? Is there a fear? I would say yes. Fear of failure. That's always on the table for anybody going into a new situation. I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to be looked at as X, Y, and Z. You know, that's always I guess a little dark cloud that hangs over a lot of brothers at some time. Shout out to my boy Hop, who was a good dad that just tapped in.
What about fear? I think fear of responsibility.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest
literally. I was just about to touch on that. It's that fear that, you know, if your family fails, you're the one that caused that. You know what I'm saying? Because because society looks at you as you're supposed to be that breadwinner. If you guys become poor or out on the street, that's your doing. And so there's a lot of, I feel that there is that fear that, you know what, let me just, even if I hate this job, and even if, you know, it costs me that relationship with my child, at least I gave them money.
Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, I do think that there's a fear there that causes that.
The reason why I say I think it's like the fear of responsibility also is because I think a lot of people aren't able to embrace that when you do have a child, it's no longer only about you. And I think that there are some people who just really love the idea of, you know, every decision that they make is solely for them. You know, so that's why I think, you know, that's why I think a lot of people don't embrace fatherhood. That fear, more than anything, is like, wow, so you mean to tell me not only am I responsible for you know, for myself, now I'm responsible for whatever else comes with being a father. I'll tell you one thing also that I'll say about fatherhood, you know, having been a father now for quite some time, is that I had to learn in terms of like one of my fears with being a father is that I don't think that there's any perfect method to being a dad, right? So everything that my parents told me, when they told me, I didn't listen. And I didn't value it. I didn't value it. I did not value it. But as I got older and I became a parent, I said, oh, snap, the stuff that they were telling me, were true, and they was telling me it because they wanted me to avoid pitfalls that they may have encountered along the way. So here I am with my children, you know, trying to do the same thing. And my biggest fear as a dad is like, I don't want anything to happen to my children bad. I want to create this sterile environment for them where, you know, everything is perfect and it's this euphoria. But the reality of it is that, you know, they have to have their own experiences in order to learn from them, you know. So actually giving them that ability, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, like that individuality, like to allow them to test the waters and to do them and everything. That's something I had to learn over time with my children, because I'm like, man, I think about the things I did when I was their age. I don't want them doing that. I want them to learn from my mistakes. But the reality of it is like, you have to allow them to kind of learn.
So let me ask you, Josh. Let me ask you. So do we fall in the tradition of our parents of being the strict, structured parent, or the modern parent, where we allow a little bit more leniency and a little bit more freedom?
Well, that's actually a great transition to what we was going to talk about, because, you know, we probably grew up in the days where children should be seen and not heard. And it was all about, it was, you know, I was fortunate. I don't think my parents weren't dictators, but they were authoritative. Like, you know, like we knew who ran the house. There was really, you know, their word was law. And I think that
was Queen Victoria, son.
Yo, but you know something though? I think that as I became a parent, I sort of released some of the reins around that. But you know what the biggest challenge is in terms of releasing the reins around that? Your ego. Your ego. Because your ego tells you, I'm the parent, this is the child, you're gonna do what I say to do when I say to do it. So being able to actually check your ego around certain things and invite dialogue, that doesn't make you less of a parent. That just means that, you know, you're trying to create an environment where your kids actually have the ability to be open and feel comfortable with you. If everything that your kids come to you to talk to you about, you shut it down because you're the expert, then after a while your kids gonna be like, there ain't nothing really I need to say to you.
Yo, damn. My mom must have heard me. She just chimed in real quick, like.
Get off what she tell you. Get off that podcast, Rob.
She always at a moment like this. Damn, Ma, I put you on blast.
But yeah, I'm serious that you think about it like, yo, a lot of it is your ego, and your ego is what will have you saying like, wait a minute, you know what? You gonna do as I say. And that's just gonna be it. Even I think the ego is so strong that even if the way that you're suggesting is incorrect, your ego will not allow you to say that you learned something. Learned something from your child. And that's for me. I had to let go of my ego, and I had to invite dialogue and be a little bit more flexible, you know. Right. And for me, I think that flexibility kind of came from, you know, understanding still that, you know what, the authority in this house is still myself and my wife. We still have the final decision, but you know, we are gonna be willing to have that open dialogue and that conversation with you around stuff. What do you think about that, Delroy?
No, I mean, I think you're completely right. One of the things I noticed in my son, who's a toddler, is that we can say all we want, you know, like, yeah, like, hey, get down off that, or stop throwing that, but he's not gonna do it. I mean, and unless you resort to like extreme, you know, forms of discipline, you know what I'm saying? He's trying to, you know, experience the environment and, you know, find out about his limits through his own means. And right now he doesn't have the form of communication that we can, you know, I'm saying, we can talk back and forth and have a full dialogue about what we want to do and what we don't want to do. And he doesn't really have that ability as yet. So he's going to continue to test those limits. You know what I'm saying? And I think as a father, now I'm starting to see that, you know what, maybe rather than me telling him, hey, yo, get down off that, you know what I'm saying? I might want to just go over to him and ask him why he's climbing it, you know what I'm saying? Or just, you know, get down on his level and just really try to connect with him, even through body language, since he's unable to like speak, to communicate body language wise that, hey, this might be a little bit dangerous. I'm not going to pull you down, you know what I'm saying? Because I do want you to explore it, but this is a little bit dangerous. So I'm going to keep my eye on you, but hey, just be careful as you go through. So no, I definitely understand that ego. You know, a lot of times you think like, hey, this is my house, this is my roof. Like what I said is in stone, and that's it. Like a lot of times you want to think that way, but you know what I'm saying? I do believe that that's something that's passed down from how we were raised.
Exactly.
That makes you think that that's the case. Like, yo, when I was living with my parents, it was like, oh, okay, boom. Like whatever, you know, whatever happens in this house, this is their house. You know what I'm saying? I have to make sure that I listen to that authority figure, and their word was it. You know what I'm saying? So definitely, it's definitely something I'm getting used to now with my son, and is making sure that I communicate, you know, the right way. To me, that's the right way. Communicate that, hey, we may not be on equal levels as far as authoritation.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? But communication wise, we're on equal levels. So I need to get down on your level and just communicate like, hey, this is how things normally work. Let me know how you're feeling about this situation, and we could go forward with that.
You know what the ego does too? The ego makes us feel embarrassed in public because we view this. You don't have no control of your child. You need to get control of your child. But yo, I'm not even talking about from a toddler age. I'm talking about even if you think about when kids get older and they doing things in the community, people are like, oh, Miss Janice ain't got no control of her kids. You know, it's just something about that ego piece that I think that sometimes jams us up. And I want to just go back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, because I'm listening to you talk, and what I hear is sort of like the evolution of parenting, like where we have come as fathers of color, or parents just in general of color, where we've come from before, where it was like, yo, get down on his level. I wear the pants in this house. He gonna do what I say.
That's it. Let me snatch you up.
You know,
that
was viewed, you know, like the stuff that you're saying is actually good parenting. But it was a time where that was viewed as, oh, this man you don't have no control of your kids, or you let your kids do whatever because of, think about your lexicon. Like, you know, I'm gonna allow my kid to explore. You know, I want to get down on this level. I want to see what my child got going on or whatever. That's viewed as, yo, you got no control of your kid kind of thing. And that's why, I mean, the ego, I think, comes into play, and people get shamed into becoming this like overly authoritative parent where they just everything their kid do, they spend the time chasing behind them, trying to put them back and get them in check. Like, no, you're not training your dog. These are your children that you want to have a conversation with. Yeah, Rob, I see you want to say something.
Nah, it's. I was gonna say it's all in how you administer what you're trying to teach to your child, man. It's more than one way to skin a cat. You know, I come from the velvet glove and the iron hand. It looks soft, but don't play with it because it's real. You know, I'm a firm believer in being firm but fair. You know, with maybe coming down to his level, but looking at him. What I've noticed with children is that if I raise my voice an octave, it already hits a bell in the head like, uh-oh. He's upset. Versus, hey, why don't you do it? Then it's like, oh, Dad is cool now. He's all right. He's on my level. You know what I mean? So there's a median that you definitely have to play with raising children. Definitely.
Yeah. Stamp Sink said, what y'all think about kids see too much on the cell phone, same images going and print it in your head over and over again? I feel sorry. I feel sorry now for like parents, you know, because before we had dial-up, and some of the stuff that parents are now encountering, I don't know how. Look, you got to be a new age parent, but that speaks to the point of what I was saying about the evolution of a parent, you know, especially the evolution of a father, like how you fathered in the past, you know, may not be able to father the same way now.
My mother's not giving me no phone, bro. She was taking me off the phone. Now giving children the phone. That's a lot of freedom, bro. Remember when we had advantage of using the phone, we had to wait till we get home to use the phone. We had a dime or a quarter. Damn, I said a dime or a quarter to use the phone. But now we give children this freedom on the phone. And most parents ain't putting the parental lock on there, say don't go to this page, that page. It's like, here's a phone. Call your friends or call me when you get home. The child ain't gonna do that. It's gonna search the web. It's gonna Google the idea his friend said. All these different things. You know, that's a way we grew up. Now, how do you administer a child on a phone, on TikTok? You can't, it's almost hard to, because if you're a single parent, you're at work, child comes home from school, you don't even know if it's done his homework until you get home. By that time, the kid that made 500 TikToks, you know what I mean? And then been all through the internet, and now they tired and they ain't even done their homework. So honestly, if anyone is giving their child a phone under the age of 10, you need to be tapped on your hand, man. I don't even think that's the right way of parenting. That's my opinion. You know,
Well,
shoot me.
I hear you. I
well,
hear
look,
you. I hear you on that.
well. Look though, look where we going, because there's a point in time where most people didn't get a cell phone till they were over 18.
That's
You
a
know,
fact.
now it's like you we the bar's been lowered. We talking about now 10. So
10.
what's gonna happen 10 years from now? You're gonna be like, well, he's 6 years old. He need an iPhone. Go ahead and get him his iPhone.
I I think where that lies is definitely going to be in communication. You're going to have to get on a level with your child where they're communicating with you what's going on the internet and on their phones and so forth. I remember, like, for me, be growing up, I wanted to be outside. I didn't want to be in the house at all. Like, you know what I'm saying? If I'm in the house, that means I got to read, you know what I'm saying? Or, you know what I'm saying, I got to
Chores.
clean, you know what I'm saying? And I don't want to do none of that. So I'm outside, I'm outside. If we wake up at 7 in the morning, we're eating breakfast, I'm going outside. I ain't trying to come back until the lights go out. And I'm like, all right, let me go get home. Nowadays, you have to essentially, like, you force your kid to go outside. Like, hey, you know what I'm saying? Go outside. And it's like, oh, what am I going to do outside? You know what I'm saying? It's like, what? There's a world out there for you to. So I really just feel like communication is where we have to go as parents now, to let kids know that, hey, the internet isn't as safe as you may think it is.
Exactly.
And should something happen, I need you to know that you can come to me with anything, without judgment. You know what I'm saying? It's almost as if, like, back in the days, if you would have went outside and you saw, you know what I'm saying, and you got into a fight, you wanted to make sure that you could come home and tell your parent, like, hey, I just got into a scuffle or a fight with someone out on the streets, and they were okay with okay, what happened? Who was it? You know what I'm saying? Did you win? You know what I mean? But like, you wanted to make sure that you were able to communicate that, like, hey, there's things going out in the streets. The same way now we have to make sure that our kids can communicate that, hey, there's things going on online, and I want you to know it, without being like, hey, that's why I told you not to go on the internet. You know what I'm saying? Once you blow up like that, it's like, I'm not going to tell you nothing else that happened.
Yeah. A lot
That's
of it
it.
is a lot of it is definitely in our approach. I think another thing that I learned as a father also is that some child rearing and discipline has to come in the form of natural consequences, right? Like, for things that's unsafe, of course you need to intervene as a parent. But then there are other things that natural consequences, take care of it. Like, if your kid is not taking care of their shoes or their video game system or whatever, and it breaks, well, the natural consequence is that you didn't take care of your stuff. This is what happens as a result of it, kind of
That's right.
thing. But I think you got to get to a point where you're actually comfortable with that, with allowing natural consequences to take place. But I think sometimes we get we become so anxious to try to administer some type of discipline, out of fear of feeling like, all right, we're not doing what we're supposed to do as a parent, that and administering that discipline, sometimes the lesson gets lost because a lot of times it's punitive. Like, the what they say, the time got to match the crime. Like,
Yeah.
people will come up in unrealistic things. They'll ground a kid for. They'd be like, yeah, you can't go out for the whole summer or whatever. Somebody tell you can't go out for the whole summer, then what lesson is learned in that? Like, okay, yeah, they're gonna be like, well, I missed curfew, so now I can't go out for the whole summer. But at the end of the day, if you want your kids to develop, you got to give them an opportunity to practice the skill again, right? And then after a while, certain things don't have any value. It's almost like if you tell a kid, okay, you want a new Xbox, I'm gonna give you $1 a day. You think kids understand the time of concept? A year for a kid is different than a year for an adult. They're like, wait a minute, that's not even realistic. I got to be good for a year and you're going to give me $1 each day. After a while, the kid is going to give up on this. So, you know,
I
you
might as
have
well
to
just be
teach.
bad real quick and just do what I want to do.
Exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. It has no value. You know, the other day when you was talking to you, you had mentioned, which I think is also a very good discussion. You were talking about like mental health, right? And mental health and fathers' investment in mental health. And fathers almost is like a selling point to actually make sure that their kids or their family is engaged in mental health. You want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, without a doubt. So now I'm big on mental health. My wife's a mental health therapist, and so that really got me into understanding my own mental health. Well, before I get into that, I do want to say Happy Veterans Day to all my fellow servicemen. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Thank you for your service.
You know, personally, I suffer from, anxiety, PTSD from the military. And after leaving the military, I still didn't feel that there was anybody I could talk to about it. I didn't go to my VA, I didn't do any of the things that you would think that people would do. And so after meeting my wife, that's when she's obviously, it's her profession. She's an advocate for mental health. And so that was one of the big things that I was driven into, is making sure that, you'd see someone, that you talk to someone. And it's something that, because of the relationship with my wife, and because of the relationship I now have with myself,
There you go.
I have to be adamant about it too. So to me, it's a guarantee that, if you're a father, you should definitely seek out counseling or therapy to better your mental health, to better your family mental health, because they're looking at you as like, okay, if my father thinks it's like, it's like black magic or whatever, you know what I'm saying, then I don't got to do it either. You know what I'm saying? So, you know what I'm saying? I think that in our society, it's thought of, or not in our society, in our community, it's thought of that mental health is, you have to be literally in a straitjacket before someone's like, all right, let's send him to therapy. You know what I'm saying? And I think therapy is more preventative than it is, wait till the problem is here and then now let's seek some help.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely the stigma associated with it. And, I was saying the other day, there are people that still think that folks who seek treatment crazy. But to me, the people who don't seek treatment are the people who actually should wear the crazy label. It's just a misconception in terms of what a therapist actually does. And a lot of people, to be honest with you, don't know the difference between a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and a clinician. So that's why sometimes you hear a person be like, well, you know what? You need to go see a psychiatrist, or you need a psychiatrist to give you some counseling or whatever. Like, no, psychiatrists know talk therapy, but psychiatrists also prescribe medicines. Clinicians don't prescribe medicines. Clinicians predominantly work in the form of talk therapy. Psychologists do psychological evaluations. So there are different things there, but I don't know if people take the time to educate themselves around it, predominantly because of probably the stigma associated with it. And like you said, like most of the time, to me, it seems as if we're reactive, like something has come up. Or the other thing that's sad about it is that if there's some sort of court mandate to do it, and we're forced into seeking treatment, then we've gone into treatment begrudgingly. And then are we really doing the work for ourselves, or we're just doing the work with the saying like, I need to do this to meet the court mandate? But I'm a fan of therapy also. And the reason why I'm a fan of therapy is because I think that many years ago, we didn't spend enough time talking about how to take care of our physical health. And as a result of it, I think we saw things like childhood obesity and stuff like that really boom. We got information and we realized like, okay, we need to really place some emphasis on making sure that, we do something to counteract childhood obesity and get these things under control. So we put all this time and energy and research into physical health. And only now we turn in the corner where we're starting to try to put not nearly as much as we should, but some energy into actually talking more about mental health and mental health treatment. Because the reality of it is mental health treatment should start at a school age. Like kids should have the opportunity to know, like, this is a safe space where you could go talk to somebody, if you're going through something, so you can have an outlet, so you can process what it is you're feeling. You could talk about
Right.
how these things, how your behavior is manifesting as a result of these different things. But again, there's that stigma that's associated with it that helps people shy away from it. You know, like now I feel we have more people who are mental health advocates that are in the public eye. So now therapy is starting to become a little bit more cooler than what it was. But before, I know when I was growing up, people that was in therapy in our community, we were clowning them, or they kept it a secret. Think
Yeah.
about it. They kept it a secret. Imagine you keep that you're in treatment a secret, but you really need all these other people that impact your life to potentially come into therapy with you to help you heal. And you can't bring them in because of the secrecy associated with it. So I'm a big fan of therapy.
I hear you. I mean, nowadays, I mean, to me, they've made strides, because nowadays you have like apps for it. You have like BetterHelp and so forth, where you can just go and talk to a therapist,
Yep.
just as easy as you could get on your phone and talk to anybody else. So I
Mhm.
really think that we've made strides in that area. But just like how you see people, you see a lot more people at the gym, I should say. You
Yep.
see a lot more people working out. You know what I'm saying? On if you scroll through your reels and so forth, you're gonna see a lot more people working out than you're gonna see people sitting down talking about mental health.
Mhm.
And I think once those two things do become equal, that's when we'll see that shift where we're like, okay, we're in a better headspace now.
Yeah. And you know what's sad? That goes back to what I was saying again about the ability to quantify. You can see somebody working out and you can see the end results. Oh, this person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, their shape, their physique, you know, but what people don't really realize is what's under the hood. You know,
Right.
if you're not gonna if you're not gonna do the work on what's under the hood, then the physical aspect is gonna go out the window.
Just the show, baby. That's all it
Oh man. You know, the other thing that I think in terms of fatherhood that I learned also, and I was saying this to you, is the part around like suspending our own beliefs in terms of what we believe, or what we
Yeah.
want for our children. I think is a big one also. And I use the example I was saying to you, like, you know, like if you're in the military or you graduated from college or you're a mechanic, this whole need, you know, as a father to be like, well, you know, I went to West Point, you got to go to West Point, or, you know, I went
Mm-hmm.
to HU, you got to go to HU, or, you know, this family for years and generations, you know, we owned the garage and worked on cars, so you got to be you got to work on
Coming.
garages now too, or whatever. Like, I think that that's a real struggle for fathers also in terms of allowing their kids to have some level of individuality to figure out who they are and what they want to be on their
Right.
own.
Nah, I completely understand what you're saying in that. I do think now that there are some plus and minuses to it both.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that we do have to uh, give our child that freedom to, you know, explore their own beliefs, as well as their own career paths and so forth. But I do see that there are some pluses to how it's been done in the past. For instance, the whole, you know, I'm a doctor. I've been a doctor for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've created this private practice, you know, for myself, and now it's time for me to retire. It would be nice if my child took
Right.
over those reins. I built this business from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I don't want to just give it to somebody else, some rando. So it would be nice if my child could take over and continue this legacy of being doctors in the family. I'm not saying force them to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It would be nice. So maybe if you communicated this at a younger age, and maybe if you had a better, like, I wouldn't say better relationship, but kind of a better relationship with how your child sees your work, maybe you wouldn't have to force them to do it. Maybe it
Mm.
would be something that they'd be proud to do.
What
You
do you
know?
what do you say in an instance like that where your child says to you, you know what, I think it's great that you're a doctor and you've done this practice, but I want to be a musician, and that's what my dream is, to be a musician. How do
I
you
mean,
how do you counteract that or whatever? Because you're like, I built this practice. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the tough part,
mhm,
because a
But
lot of that stuff, you know,
that's
sometimes is more so about us as the father, right?
mhm,
We look at it, we like, you know, this is what I want my kid to be, or this is
and
what I
that's
envision
it.
my kid to be, or, you know, I went to Clark, and when I was at Clark, this is what I pledged. So You got to pledge that.
Boom.
And you know, what if your kid doesn't aspire to do those things? How do you make space for them to actually have the opportunity to do it? And I think what you're saying makes sense. Like if they take an interest in it at an early age, you introduce them to it, and then you cultivate that, and then it becomes like
Correct.
this natural fit. Like, this is what I want to do. Yeah, but I think it also could be heartbreaking for a
If they
dad
don't.
if you like you described it. You know, I really want you to take this practice on. This is going to be in the family's name. It's the family legacy, and they'd be like, yeah, what I really was thinking I want to do is I really want to be a manager at McDonald's.
I mean, listen. I think about it. I'm not gonna lie. I think about it all the time. I pledged Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity in college, and so every now and then I look at my son and I'll be like, yeah, you know, I can't wait for him to, you know, get to that point where I'm like, okay, boom, you're a legacy. But then I also think like he has uncles, he has aunts and so forth that pledged other organization. It would be a disservice to me if I was to just be like, nah, you're gonna be an alpha and that's it. If you were to pledge Kappa, or if you were to pledge Q, I'd be like, nah, I ain't even coming to your program or whatever. You know what I'm saying? To me, I still have to show up no matter what org you join. You know what I'm saying? Or even if you don't join an org, I still got to show up for you because at least you're doing something that you want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So trust me, I think about it all the time. I'm like, yeah. The other day, my son was out in the Q's in Charlotte, North Carolina. They had their regional, and my son was walking down the street, and he was like, and I was like, stop that! I was like, don't do that. I was like, we don't do that. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, you know, if and when it does come to where he wants to make that decision, that's the decision. I'm proud that he's willing to do the research and so forth and go into.
Yeah.
Is that a little ego driven for a dad to feel like I want my child to be like me?
Because it really is, it's about you and not about them. That's what I'm saying about from an individual standpoint. The flip side of it is, imagine, think about it this way. So you are saying that these are things that I wanted to achieve in life. I never had the opportunity to achieve them. I wanted to go to Harvard. I couldn't get into Harvard. And then you make your life mission is now
to make your child go to Harvard.
Boot camp to become a running back because you didn't have.
And we do these things with good intent. You know what? It's hard to really disseminate what it's about, because who wouldn't want their kid to go to Harvard? Who wouldn't want their kid to be a how you call it, an NFL running back or whatever it is? So it's easy to lose sight of, like, this is not really what they want. This is what I want. Because still, at the end of the day, it's a wonderful goal, right? But for me, it's kind of like, all right, at some point in life, I had to take a step back and be like, these are the things that I saw for them and what I want for them. But these are individuals that they're growing up, and I have to be open to what it is that they want. Right? Like my daughter went to Clark. When she went to Clark, she majored in public relations. I was like, yes, public relations is great or whatever, because I'm in social service. So I'm like, I like that, somebody in public relations. And then I think year 2, she ended up calling me up, and she was like, yeah, I'm changing my major to early childhood education. And I was like, why are you doing that? Why you want to, like, my mind didn't go to, yeah, that's what you want. But then I caught myself, and she was like, no, I took some classes. I was like, okay. No, and now she's working on her master's, and her master's, she's going back to public relations. But I had to be open to at least giving that space and allowing her the freedom to make that determination on her own. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, you could be the Black Lizzie Grubman. You could be PR extraordinaire. You could do this. You could do that. This is what you're going to do. And then when you get there, you understand what I had it all formulated out in my head. And I'm like, but this is kind of her life. And I gotta let her live her life, you know. And then even though I didn't communicate these things to her and we have a great enough relationship, I wonder if I was somebody who was more communicative with her around this, the kind of pressure it would have put on her, where she had felt compelled, like, damn, like my dad want me to stay in public relations.
She don't want to let you down now that you don't put all that in her head. Like, damn, my dad really wants me to do this. Do this.
And that's something that I think generation to generation in particular, for fathers of color that sometimes we get roped into because we want the best for our children.
That's
We
a fact.
want the best for our children, and we see this potential in them. Like, you could do this. You know, you have the potential that you could go to Harvard. You mean I seen you play Pop Warner football. There's no reason why you couldn't get drafted by the Giants. Oh, you're a wonderful guitar player. You can start a band. You can do this. You can do that. And then we lose sight of that somewhere along the lines. Your child determined that, you know, like they want to. You know, I really like fast food. I want to go into the fast food industry, whatever it may be. You know, we laughing, but whatever it may be,
I think
chose.
what we do have to come to terms with is that, you know, feelings change. You know what I'm saying? You might have wanted to be, you know, an animator when you were 5. You know what I'm saying? And then you want to be a singer when you're like 10. And you want to play basketball when you're like 16. And I think that we have to come to terms with all of that is okay. You know what I'm saying? And do what makes you happy at whatever age it makes you happy. And I'll support you either way. If tomorrow you came to me and you was like, listen, I think I want to play basketball. It's like, all right, boom. I had this jersey in the back. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was ready for this. You know what I'm saying? But I do think we have to just support them by any means necessary. Support them in whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's believe me, it's a toughie though, because you know, you see them and you see all the potential and you see all the things that they
No,
you know,
and you just in the world you couldn't tell me Kiana wasn't going to the WNBA, bro. But by her junior year, I was like, yeah, this is not gonna work, bro.
Well, what was it? It was just that her interest for it.
Her interest, which was natural. You know, you get into high school, it's 9th grade, you're starting to learn your environment, you learn who's cool, what's everyone doing. And when basketball kicked in, I was like, word, she want to play ball?
But hold on a second, hold on. Add some background context to this and why this was so exciting for you that she wanted to play ball, Rob.
Why? Because I play ball. Because I play ball. It was a shoe and fit that, listen, I got all the skills. I got all the resources. I got so many friends who are coaches. There's nowhere in the world she can go wrong. There's nowhere in the world. She's right. She's playing for the Liberty right now, son. I was like, nope. This girl don't even know what her sneakers is at. She don't even know what uniform is. Totally out the window. And I had to just come to grips and be like, whatever she decides, I'm gonna love it just as much, bro.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow though.
Swallow, because I ain't gonna lie, I see me and Nell sit front row. Yeah, son.
That's a tough pill to swallow, man. Imagine you see that your child has all this potential, and you put them in boarding school and everything. You like, yeah, they're locked to go to Princeton, and then they come to you and be like, you know what I was thinking? I think I'm just gonna take the next two years of my life and just travel the world. You're gonna be looking and be like, what? You gonna do what?
And say, you know, Princeton is a lock. Like, we already got that in the bag, and you want to go 2 years?
That's the key. What you just said right there, though, Delroy. We
exactly.
We got that in the bag. So I'm saying like that part. And for those that's in the chat that have children, you probably could speak to this also. I just think it's just very, very difficult to allow that space for individuality. Even if you think like on a smaller scale, like, you know, when your kids are in high school and they pull up with these weird outfits or whatever, or they decide they want to do their hair a certain way or whatever, you look and you like, yo, what the hell? What is this? What is this about?
Tattoos, piercings. What can you? You just gotta let it ride, man, and you know, and kind of administer to them. You know, still take care of yourself. Still be passionate about it. You know, don't just be hit it and quit it type of thing. I mean, you're young. You can test the waters, but at the same time, you're gonna have to. Whatever you decide, you're gonna have to commit. Right. If you want to get the best out of what it is that you're looking to pursue, you're gonna have to commit to it. Yeah. Good, bad, different. You're gonna have to lock in.
This is a great question from Dr. Wade. What does relationship recovery look like in parental relationships that didn't start so well?
Hey, Doc, you hitting us with the questions, Doc.
What do you think about that, Rob? Because I know you shared earlier. You said that you know, that your dad wasn't in the home, and
Well, you know, well, my dad not being there was big because, well, it wasn't big because it was big and it wasn't big. But my dad not being there, my stepdad stepped in, but my stepdad died when I was 13. So at 13, I had to take on this idea that my dad is gone. How do I replace his shoes? How do I step up and become a man now? You
wow.
know, mom's is going through the traumatic loss. My sister, you know, she's just like, the man that was buying all my clothes is gone. So how do I manage that? So, you know, one of the things my father told me was that, for one, he said, son, don't go to jail because they're going to rape you in jail. He was very strict. One thing about my father, he did not pull any punches.
Clearly.
Word is bond. He told me, he said, if you stick out here, if you hang out on the street right along with your friends, you're going to jail. It was just certain things that stuck in my head and said, I'm not going to do that. So at an early age, not having him around and my biological father being around, I had to straighten up real fast. You know what I mean? And pay attention to the environment around it and just do things with a sound mind and really think about the consequences before that happened. You know what I'm saying? So now that, you know, I'm around children, I give them the freedom kind of to screw up. I let them bump their heads now. You know what I mean? I tell my wife, I said, babe, lead them to time. They're going to tell on themselves. And like clockwork, every last one of my children tell on themselves when they do something they ain't supposed to do. I said, now it's time. Now we can administer why that happened, because now the damage is done. They felt the pain of the failure, and now we can administer it, not with putting a Band-Aid on and say, look, see, I told you. This is what happened, but you didn't want to listen. So, you know, the recovery for me was just pretty much manning up. And thank God I had uncles and other father figures around me where I can emulate those images and become the man that I am today. You know, there's a gentleman, I shout out Mr. Calvin Smith, I met in Maryland. This was a man who took care of his wife, he took care of his kids. I mean, he did so much for his wife and his kids that he bought all of their clothes. This man will literally buy his wife's clothes and his children's clothes and come home. And the only thing this man didn't do was cook. I mean, he changed all the all oil changes in front of the house for all his. I mean, he did everything. I was like, damn, man. And he was a deacon too. Like, yo, you just take all of your awards, bro. Like, how you doing all this? But he made time for it. That was the thing. He made time for it. He said, yo, I could go pay $35 to get my oil change, or I can put my car up on the edge of the curb. It takes 15 minutes. Showed me that. I was like, see, now you got to think about it first. You can easily go pay a man to go mow your lawn, but if you invest in a decent lawnmower, you ain't got to pay nobody. You can go out there and mow your lawn yourself. So being self-sufficient, watching other men become self-sufficient, allowed me to become that type of man. So when I teach my children how to be self-sufficient and do things for themselves and just pay attention to what they're doing, it seemed to work out very well.
Or you can mow your lawn with your kid, teach them to do it, and spend time. I think
you get the lawnmower. Let's work together out here.
I think in terms of relationship recovery, one of the things that I think is important is that when we get older, understanding the human element of our parents. You know, our parents, I think when we're younger, there's this lore, this mystique about who they are, and sometimes we lose sight of that they're human beings, and with them being human beings, they're flawed, they're imperfect. And I think when we get older, we begin to have the ability to understand and to probably see their imperfections and be able to actually verbalize their imperfections in a way where it invites and welcomes a dialogue. You know, like we were saying earlier about children are to be seen and not heard. You know, as a kid, you may spot those imperfections, but you know, that doesn't mean that your parents are going to be receptive to hearing them. So I think understanding when you get older, the human element of that they were learning, and that a lot of the things that our parents did with us, they experienced from their parents. So to me, the idea is from generation to generation to improve on whatever it is that we learn. The other part of it, I think, also is getting to a place where our parents are receptive. You know, like that they're receptive to some of the things that they use, some of the strategies that they use with us were not necessarily always the correct methods. And I think if you could have that dialogue and begin to have that kind of exchange, to me, it invites an opportunity for relationship recovery. But all of that only happens is if that I think if both parties are vulnerable. And vulnerability is a big piece, right? Like, so feeling comfortable enough, again, to be able to go to your parents and say, you know, well, when I was younger, this is the experience that I had, or this is what my childhood was like. And your parent being receptive and having the willingness to hear that rather than becoming defensive and going off on you. You know, the standard tagline around a lot of this stuff, which drives me crazy, is when you hear parents say, well, I did the best I could, or, well, you turned out all right. You know, to me, that's all dismissive of trauma that people have experienced. You can't tell a person, well, I did the best I could, or you turned out right. Like, there has to be an openness for you to actually say, well, you know, well, talk to me and tell me about the experience that you had. You know, tell me what it was that what I did. You know, and I think that if you actually invite that dialogue, that helps improve a person for when they become a parent, if they're not already a parent, right? Like, one of the things that my youngest son has said to me that kind of had me laugh. Yo, my youngest son is like chock full of jokes. Like, some of the stuff he say, we used to say like he has no filter. But one of the things that he said to me before, he was like, you know, you guys got to learn to let your kids kind of grow up and allow them to be more responsible or whatever. And in my mind, the first place my mind went, again, ego is like, I want you to be responsible, but if you keep coming to me, asking me, can I give you money for this or that or whatever, it's kind of hard for me to say, yo, let you grow up. Like, you can't have it where I want you in dad mode when I need something, kind of thing. But the reality of it is, like, maybe the role of the dad is to kind of be that safety net, the safety blanket for when you fall or pick you up, not necessarily financially, but I just thought that was a really good nugget from him to say, like, you know, it's okay to loosen the reins a little bit, like, give us a little bit leeway, and that'll help in terms of our advancement to get to become adults where you are, you know. So, and again, like, I think in terms of recovery for relationships, like, you really have to have or be in a place where, as a parent, you're receptive and there's a level of comfort for people to talk and share openly. You want to add anything to this, Delroy?
No, I think as far as relationship recovery, I think it has to start within. I think that therapy plays a huge part in that. I think that at some point you need to go and speak to somebody and let them know, you know, how you were feeling about the relationship that you were having with, you know, say for instance, your mother or your father. I think that once you build that up within yourself, you know, you speak to someone and you're able to become vulnerable, you know what I'm saying? Then you can speak to whomever, mother or father, and actually start building upon that relationship. Otherwise, you might become triggered. You know what I'm saying? They might say something and you're like, see, this is why I didn't come and talk to you in the first place. You know what I'm saying? And then you're going back in that space where you're not communicating. So I think therapy is something that's going to allow you to, you know, handle being triggered in that situation and allow you to, like, look within yourself and be like, you know what? Hey, this is how, you know, I normally speak to this person. Let me see, maybe it's a miscommunication or something along those lines. Or maybe I need to bring that person into therapy with me so that we can talk it out. But I think once you look within yourself, you know what I'm saying, and build up who you are, that's when you can have relationship recovery. Otherwise, you're always going to be, it's like a cycle. You're just going to be falling backwards.
Yeah, and that unresolved trauma, when you don't address it, it just goes from generation to generation. You know, like, you become resentful, and then that resentment shows up in a relationship with you know, your kids, and it's just nah, it's a no win. Ken said at a point you turn from a parent to an advisor. That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely, and I know you just came in a little bit later, but we was talking about like the shift, making that shift in a sense to an advisor, right? Because we have these expectations of our children based on what we think they should be or what they should be doing. And then when they don't follow the script like we laid it out, that's when I think, hey, Gail, you what? You mean to tell me you don't want to go to the WNBA? Yeah.
Heartbroken, bro. Heartbroken, son.
Yeah. Well, this was a great conversation. Delroy, tell everybody where they can find your podcast at and how they can follow you on social media and get in contact with you.
No, of course. So you can find me on Instagram and on YouTube under Fathers in Color. And you can see our videos. Our videos speak about, tips and tricks of the trade, as well as the differences between how we were fathering and how we plan on fathering the next generation. So yeah, you can find that on Instagram, Fathers in Color here, and then you can find that on YouTube as well.
There you go. And when you get a chance, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Great conversation. I like what you're doing. When we were talking before, I had said something about a documentary. That's something you may want to consider.
Hey, I'm looking into it. That'd be a good one.
That's something you want to consider. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the No Ideas Original Podcast. We'll see you next week. Have a good evening, everybody.
Peace.